The message arrived on a Tuesday morning when Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking his second cup of coffee aboard the battlecruiser Defiance. The alien transmission cut through every human communication channel at once, flooding screens across 17 star systems with the same cold declaration. The speaker was tall and crystalline, its body reflecting light like a living prism, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of 1,000 worlds. I am Ambassador Thex of the Vorthan Collective, speaking for the Galactic Coalition of civilized species. Humanity has been observed and evaluated. Your rapid expansion across these star systems violates the established order that has maintained peace for 10,000 years. You have 72 Earth hours to begin withdrawal from all contested territories and submit to coalition oversight of your military capabilities. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability. Morrison set down his coffee cup with deliberate calm, though his hands wanted to shake. Around him, the bridge crew of the Defiance stared at their screens in stunned silence. Through the viewports, Morrison could see the gleaming hulls of human colony ships in the distance, carrying families to new worlds, carrying hope to the stars. Now those same ships might become targets. Dr. Lisa Kane's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth. Admiral, are you receiving this transmission? Her tone was steady, but Morrison had known the xenobiologist long enough to hear the worry underneath. We're receiving it, Doctor. What's your assessment? I've been studying every piece of data we have on coalition species. Jake, they've never encountered anything like us. Every species they've contacted has eventually accepted subordination. The Vorthan themselves were once warriors, but they surrendered 3 centuries ago after their first contact with what they call superior civilizations. Since then, they've become perfect coalition citizens. Morrison pulled up tactical displays showing the positions of human settlements across the frontier. Each dot of light represented thousands of lives, people who had left Earth seeking freedom among the stars. How many species are in this coalition? At least 37 confirmed, possibly more. They operate on a strict hierarchy. The older and more technologically advanced species guide the younger ones. It's presented as benevolent mentorship, but the pattern is always the same. First contact, demonstration of superior technology, ultimatum, and then integration into their system. Captain Ryan Brooks joined the conversation from his position aboard the colony ship Horizon near the edge of human space. Admiral, I'm seeing movement out here. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures approaching our outer settlements. Whatever they're bringing, it's big. Morrison studied the tactical readouts streaming across his screens. The coalition wasn't bluffing. Ships were already moving into position around human colonies, cutting off escape routes and establishing what could only be described as siege positions. The alien fleet was unlike anything in human military doctrine. Each ship seemed to represent a different species, their technologies complementing each other in ways that spoke of centuries of cooperation. Jake, Dr. Kane continued, there's something else. I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of coalition species. They all show similar patterns of behavior. Once they join the coalition, their innovation rates drop dramatically. They become stable, peaceful, but they stop growing. They stop exploring. They stop creating anything truly new. The communication channel expanded as President Helen Carter joined from Earth. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had led humanity through the early years of interstellar expansion. Admiral Morrison, Dr. Kane, I've been listening to your analysis. What are we really dealing with here? Morrison turned to face the communication screen. Madam President, the Coalition appears to be a galactic empire disguised as a benevolent alliance. They're offering us the same deal they've offered every other species. Surrender our independence in exchange for peace and guidance. And if we refuse, then we fight alone against 37 civilizations that have had thousands of years to perfect their cooperation. President Carter was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a determination that Morrison recognized. It was the same tone she'd used when authorizing the first colony ships, when humanity had decided to reach for the stars despite not knowing what waited for them out there. Dr. Kane, in your professional opinion, what happens to a species that accepts Coalition membership? They survive, Madam President. They're given advanced technology, protection from threats, and guidance in their development. But they stop being themselves. The Vorthon were once explorers and warriors. Now they're administrators and diplomats. The Zephyrites were energy beings who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Now they use that power only as the Coalition directs. Each species becomes a specialized tool in a vast machine. Morrison watched the tactical displays update as more Coalition ships moved into position. The enemy fleet was massive, representing technologies that humanity had only dreamed of. Energy weapons that could drain power from entire star systems. Ships that seemed to bend space around them, and swarm intelligences that moved with perfect coordination. They're not trying to destroy us, he realized aloud. They're trying to contain us. Exactly, Dr. Kane confirmed. They want to preserve us as we are long enough to process us into what they need us to become. Every species has something valuable to offer the Coalition. Humanity's rapid expansion and adaptability would make us excellent scouts and colonists under their direction. Captain Brooks's voice cut through the discussion with urgent news. They're broadcasting something to our colonies. The Vorthon are speaking directly to our settlers. The transmission appeared on their screens. Ambassador Thex stood in what appeared to be a pristine city of crystal and light. Behind the alien diplomat, beings of various species moved with purpose and apparent contentment. The Vorthon's voice was patient, almost gentle. Citizens of the human colonies, you do not need to fear. The Coalition offers protection, advancement, and peace. Your leaders may choose conflict, but you have another option. Any human settlement that requests Coalition protection will receive it immediately. You will be relocated to worlds more suitable for your species, given technology to ease your lives, and integrated into a galactic community that has known peace for 10 millennia. Morrison felt his jaw tighten. The aliens were offering humanity's colonists a way out, trying to split the human response before it could solidify. It was a clever strategy, one that had probably worked countless times before. President Carter's response came swiftly and with absolute finality. Admiral Morrison, Captain Brooks, Dr. Kane, and all personnel listening to this communication. I want you to record my next words and broadcast them to every human settlement, every ship, and every citizen in our space. The president paused, and Morrison could almost see her squaring her shoulders in the way she did before making the hardest decisions. To the Galactic Coalition and Ambassador Thex, humanity rejects your ultimatum. We reject your offer of protection. We reject your promise of peace at the cost of our freedom. We are not a species that has ever chosen safety over liberty, and we will not start now. To every human listening to this message, we go to the stars as free people, or we do not go at all. The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the defiance in absolute silence. Morrison looked at his crew, seeing his own determination reflected in their faces. Outside the viewports, the first coalition ships were moving into attack positions. The war for humanity's soul was about to begin. The first attack came at dawn on Kepler 442b, where Commander Alex Torres was reviewing mining reports over breakfast when the sky began to shimmer. The Zephyrite ships descended like falling stars, their energy weapons reaching out to touch the colony's power grid with invisible fingers. Within minutes, the settlement's shields flickered and died, leaving 3,000 colonists defenseless under an alien sky. Torres ran to the command center as emergency lights bathed the corridors in red. His communication officer, Lieutenant Gary Chen, was frantically trying to re-establish contact with the other human settlements. "Sir, they're hitting all the outer colonies simultaneously. Same pattern everywhere. They're draining our power systems without actually destroying anything." Through the command center's reinforced windows, Torres could see the alien ships hovering above the colony like patient predators. The Zephyrite vessels were beautiful in their own way, flowing and organic, their hulls pulsing with captured energy. But there was something cold about their perfection, something that made Torres think of tomb sculptures. "They want us alive," he said aloud, understanding the alien strategy with sudden clarity. "They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to make us helpless enough to surrender." The communication system crackled to life with a familiar voice. Ambassador Thex appeared on the main screen, the crystalline being's expression somehow conveying both patience and mild disappointment. "Commander Torres, I know you can hear this transmission. Your colony's situation is hopeless. We have disabled your defenses without harming your people. This demonstrates our intention to preserve human life. Order your people to evacuate to the designated collection points, and they will be transported to safety aboard coalition vessels." Torres looked around the command center at his staff. These were people who had left Earth to build something new among the stars, who had spent years turning a barren world into a home. The mining operation they protected was more than just valuable minerals. It was proof that humans could make their mark on the galaxy. "Ambassador Thex," Torres said, activating the response channel. "I have a message for you and your coalition. Go to hell." The transmission cut off, and Torres turned to his people. "We might not have power for the shields, but we still have emergency generators and the old projectile weapons. If they want this colony, they're going to have to take it the hard way." Back on Earth, Dr. Paul Watson was discovering why the Coalition's strategy had worked so well for so long. In his laboratory beneath the capital city, he studied fragments of Coalition technology recovered from deep space encounters. What he found made his blood run cold. The alien technology was perfect. Too perfect. Every component was flawlessly designed and manufactured to specifications that had remained unchanged for centuries. There were no signs of innovation, no evidence of recent improvements or experimental modifications. It was as if the Coalition species had reached a technological plateau and simply stopped climbing. Dr. Lisa Kane joined him in the laboratory, her face grave with new information. "Paul, I've finished analyzing the genetic samples we collected from the Vorthan diplomatic vessel. You need to see this." She activated a holographic display showing complex genetic sequences. "These are the Vorthan genes responsible for aggression, curiosity, and independent thinking. Look at them." Watson studied the patterns, his expertise in xenobiology allowing him to understand what Kane was showing him. They've been modified, suppressed. Every Coalition species we've encountered shows the same patterns. Their capacity for violence has been reduced, yes, but so has their drive to explore, to question, to grow. They've been genetically pacified in ways that go far beyond simple aggression control. The implications hit Watson like a physical blow. They're not just politically subordinate to the coalition, they've been biologically altered to be content with subordination. Meanwhile, Captain Nina Foster pushed her reconnaissance ship Pathfinder through the outer edges of coalition space, using every stealth system humanity had developed to avoid detection. Her mission was simple in concept, but deadly in execution. Get behind enemy lines and learn how the coalition really operated. What she discovered challenged everything the aliens had claimed about themselves. The coalition fleet positions revealed a rigid hierarchy that had nothing to do with benevolent cooperation. The oldest species, beings called the Nexari, who could manipulate reality itself, stationed themselves safely behind lines of younger species. The Vorthan, despite being coalition diplomats, were clearly expendable frontline troops. "It's not an alliance," Foster reported back to Earth through encrypted channels. "It's a pyramid scheme. The older species use the younger ones as buffers and resources. The Vorthan aren't partners. They're middle management in a cosmic corporation." Her ship's sensors picked up something else that made her stomach turn. In the deep space between star systems, she detected massive structures that her computer identified as prison ships. Closer investigation revealed they were filled with members of various coalition species, not criminals, but individuals whose genetic modifications had apparently failed to take hold completely. General Marcus Stone coordinated Earth's defense preparations from a bunker deep beneath the surface. Reports flooded in from across human space as the coalition tightened its grip on the outer colonies. But something unexpected was happening alongside the military action. "General," his aide reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different human settlements, but we're also getting something else, applications for asylum from coalition citizens." Stone looked up from his tactical displays. "What do you mean, asylum?" "Small groups, mostly young adults from various coalition species. They're requesting permission to defect to human space. Our xenology teams are having trouble understanding their motivations, but they seem to be claiming that exposure to human resistance has awakened something in them." The holographic display showed the current state of the conflict. Red markers indicated human colonies under siege. Yellow markers showed settlements that had requested coalition protection, and green markers represented colonies still under human control. But now blue markers began appearing. Coalition defectors, seeking refuge with humanity. Dr. Kane's voice came through the communication system with urgency. "General Stone, I think I understand what's happening. The coalition has spent 10,000 years creating a galaxy-wide population of beings who are genetically and culturally programmed to avoid conflict. But they've never encountered a species like us before." "Explain, Doctor." "We're not just resisting them militarily. We're providing an example of something they thought was extinct in the galaxy, a species willing to fight for its independence regardless of the odds. Some coalition citizens are remembering what their ancestors gave up when they accepted peaceful subordination." Stone studied the tactical display with new understanding. The blue markers representing coalition defectors were clustered around areas where human resistance was strongest. Young Vorthan, Zephyrite, and even some Nexari were abandoning their fleets to seek sanctuary with the very species their leaders were trying to conquer. Ambassador Thex's voice echoed across human space once again, but this time, the crystalline being's tone carried something new: uncertainty. Humanity continues to resist the natural order. This behavior is not just self-destructive. It is corrupting to younger species who witness it. The coalition offers one final opportunity for peaceful integration. Surrender now, and your species will be treated with the same care and guidance offered to all civilized beings. President Carter's response was broadcast from Earth's heavily fortified capital. Ambassador Thex and the coalition leadership, humanity has an offer for you. Any being from any species who chooses freedom over safety, growth over stagnation, and independence over protection is welcome in human space. We will defend their right to make that choice with our lives. In his laboratory, Dr. Watson made another discovery that would change everything. Hidden in the deepest layers of coalition technology were traces of something ancient, control systems that went beyond genetic modification. The coalition wasn't just managing its member species through biological means. Something else was. Pulling the strings, something that had been guiding galactic civilization for far longer than 10,000 years. The siege of humanity had become something the coalition had never experienced before. A war that was awakening the galaxy itself. Dr. Lisa Kane stood before a wall of data that represented the psychological profiles of 37 different species, each one a thread in the tapestry of coalition control that had wrapped around the galaxy for 10 millennia. The patterns were so clear now that she wondered how anyone had missed them before. Every species that joined the coalition followed the same path. First contact, demonstration of superior force, negotiation period, surrender, and then the slow transformation. From independent civilization to specialized component in a vast machine. But humans are different, she said to the empty laboratory, her voice echoing off the metal walls. The revelation had been building in her mind for weeks, but now it crystallized with perfect clarity. Every other species in the galaxy had made the same fundamental assumption when faced with superior force, that survival required submission to that force. Humans made a different calculation entirely. Her communication console chimed with an urgent message from Lieutenant Colonel Beth Harper, who was leading a desperate raid on a coalition communication hub in the Tau Ceti system. Harper's strike. Team had managed to infiltrate the facility using captured coalition technology, and what they were discovering was reshaping humanity's understanding of their enemy. Dr. Kane, you need to hear this. Harper's voice crackled through the secured channel. Around her, the sounds of combat echoed as her team fought their way deeper into the alien facility. Gary Chen has been digging through their communication archives. The coalition isn't what they claim to be. Tech specialist Gary Chen's voice joined the transmission, excitement and horror warring in his tone. Doctor, I've broken their encryption on internal communications going back 3,000 years. The coalition has a secret they've been hiding from every species they've encountered, including most of their own members. Kane leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of her workstation. What kind of secret? They're not the top of the food chain. There's something above them, something they call the first ones. The coalition leadership takes orders from beings so old that most coalition species don't even know they exist. And these first ones, they're not benevolent guides. They're harvesters. The data Chen had extracted painted a picture that made Kane's blood run cold. The coalition operated like a vast farm, with each member species contributing specific resources to their mysterious masters. The Vorthon provided administrative efficiency and diplomatic skills. The Zephyrite offered energy manipulation capabilities. The Nexari contributed reality-shaping abilities. Each species had been molded over centuries to maximize their contribution to this galactic harvest. Harvesting what? Kane asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. Innovation, creativity, growth. The first ones feed on the developmental energy of younger civilizations. They don't want to destroy other species. They want to domesticate them, to channel all their creative potential into forms that can be consumed. Harper's voice cut through the technical explanation with urgent tactical information. We're seeing movement in the deep coalition networks. References to something called the occurrence protocol. Whatever that is, the coalition leadership is terrified of it happening. Kane pulled up her own files on human psychology and development patterns. If the coalition was a farm for creative energy, then humanity represented something unprecedented, a species that produced more innovation when threatened than when comfortable, that grew stronger under pressure rather than weaker. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Brooks commanded a growing fleet of human survivors and coalition defectors in the space between star systems. What had started as a desperate evacuation mission had transformed into something entirely different, a mobile rebellion that attracted new members from every species it encountered, young Vorthan warriors who remembered their ancestors' battle. Hymns joined human marines in boarding actions against coalition vessels. Zephyr engineers worked alongside human technicians to create hybrid technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Most remarkably, several Nexari had abandoned their reality-shaping duties to explore what they called chaos, patterns, the unpredictable creativity that humans seem to generate naturally. Captain Brooks, reported his science officer, Dr. Maria Santos, I've been studying the defectors who've joined our fleet. They're all showing the same psychological pattern. Exposure to human resistance behavior is triggering what can only be described as genetic reversion. Brooks turned from his tactical displays to look at Santos with interest. What do you mean by genetic reversion? Their modified genes are becoming active again. The biological changes that made them compliant. Coalition citizens are breaking down. It's as if human stubbornness is contagious at a molecular level. The communication system activated with a priority message from Earth. President Carter's image appeared on the main screen, her expression grim but determined. Captain Brooks, Dr. Santos, we've received intelligence from Dr. Kane's team that changes everything. The coalition answers to something called the First Ones, beings that have been harvesting the creative energy of galactic civilizations for thousands of years. Brooks felt his understanding of the conflict shift like tectonic plates. Madam President, are you saying this war isn't really about human expansion? No, Captain. This war is about something the coalition has never encountered before. A species that becomes more creative and innovative when threatened rather than less. We're not just resisting conquest, we're breaking their entire system of control. Ambassador Thex's voice suddenly filled every communication channel in human space. The crystalline being's usual calm replaced by something approaching desperation. Humans of all settlements and ships, your resistance has triggered responses we did not anticipate. Younger species are abandoning their assigned roles to join your chaotic rebellion. This cannot be allowed to continue. The alien diplomat paused, and when it continued, its voice carried a note of genuine confusion. We offer you one final opportunity to understand. Every civilized species eventually recognizes the wisdom of accepting guidance from their superiors. The galaxy has known peace for 10,000 years because every species has accepted this truth. Why do you refuse to see reason? President Carter's response was broadcast from Earth's capital, her words carrying the weight of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and refused to accept limitations. Ambassador Thex, you ask why we refuse to see reason. The answer is simple. We define reason differently than you do. You see a species faced with superior force, and you assume that species should submit to that force. We see a species faced with superior force, and we ask how we can become superior ourselves. Dr. Kane's voice joined the conversation from her laboratory. Ambassador, I've studied every coalition species extensively. You all made the same choice when faced with advanced civilizations. You chose survival over growth, safety over freedom, peace over possibility. That choice preserved your species, but it ended your evolution as sentient beings. The communication channel expanded as Dr. Watson joined from his deep space laboratory. We've discovered something else, Ambassador. Your coalition isn't led by the species you claim are in charge. You're all servants to something much older, something that feeds on the creative potential you've given up. For the first time since humanity had encountered them, Ambassador Thex was silent for a long moment. When the Vorthon finally spoke, its voice carried something that sounded almost like fear. The humans speak of things that are forbidden knowledge. These matters are not for younger species to comprehend. Submit now, and your people will be spared the consequences of your curiosity. Captain Brooks laughed, the sound carrying clearly through the communication system. Ambassador, you still don't understand us at all. Telling humans that something is forbidden knowledge is the best possible way to make sure we'll investigate it thoroughly. Dr. Kane was already pulling up the data Chen had transmitted from the Coalition Communication Hub. Hidden in the deepest archives were references to a galactic civilization that had existed before the Coalition, before the first ones had established their harvest system. The records were fragmentary, but they told the story of species that had grown and evolved together without subordination, that had explored the galaxy as equals rather than as components in someone else's machine. The occurrence protocol that had terrified coalition leadership was becoming clear. It was their contingency plan for what to do if a species ever proved capable of breaking their system of control from within. Humanity wasn't just resisting conquest. Humanity was reminding the galaxy what freedom looked like, and that memory was spreading faster than the Coalition could contain it. The revolution had begun, but none of them yet realized that the real enemy was still hidden in the depths of space, waiting to see if this new threat could be contained or if more direct action would be required. The siege of Earth began on a Wednesday morning, when the first ones finally revealed themselves to the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Defiance as space itself seemed to tear open around Earth's outer system, and through those rifts came ships that hurt to look at directly. They were not built so much as grown, their forms shifting between dimensions in ways that made human minds struggle to process what they were seeing. The beings that emerged from those impossible vessels were ancient beyond comprehension. Their forms barely contained energy that pulsed with the accumulated power of 1 million consumed civilizations. When they spoke, their words bypassed all communication technology and appeared directly in the minds of every sapient being in the system. We are the first ones. We have guided this galaxy's development for 50,000 years. The human aberration ends now. But something the first ones had not anticipated was already happening across Coalition space. On the crystal homeworld of the Vorthon, young warriors gathered in the ancient combat arenas that had been sealed for 3 centuries. They sang the old battle songs that their genetic modifications should have made them forget, songs that spoke of glory in struggle rather than peace in submission. Commander Alex Torres, still holding out in the ruins of the mining colony on Kepler 442b, received a communication that changed everything. A full squadron of Vorthan warships was approaching his position, but their message was not a demand for surrender. Human Commander Torres, this is Strike Leader Vex of the Reborn. Crystal Fleet, we request permission to join your resistance. Our ancestors were warriors before they were pacified. Your example has reminded us what we chose to forget. Torres stared at the tactical display showing the approaching Vorthan ships. These were not the sleek diplomatic vessels of Ambassador Vex, but ancient warships pulled from mothballed fleets, their crystal hulls singing with barely contained energy. The genetic modifications that had made the Vorthan into perfect coalition citizens were breaking down across their entire species, triggered by exposure to humanity's refusal to accept defeat. Dr. Paul Watson made the discovery that would reshape the war while analyzing samples taken from defecting coalition soldiers. The biological control systems used by the first ones were not permanent modifications, but temporary suppression of existing genetic patterns. Under extreme stress, such as witnessing another species fight for its freedom, these suppressions failed, and the original personality traits reasserted themselves. "It's not just the Vorthan," he reported to President Carter from his laboratory. "We're seeing genetic reversion in every coalition species that has had significant contact with human resistance. The Zephyrite are remembering how to use their energy manipulation for creation instead of just following orders. The Nexari are exploring chaotic reality patterns that their masters specifically forbade." President Carter studied the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. What had started as humanity's desperate last stand was becoming something unprecedented in galactic history. A rebellion that spread not through military conquest, but through the simple example of refusing to surrender. "Dr. Watson, are you telling me that the coalition species were always capable of independence, but something was suppressing that capability?" "Exactly, Madam President. The first ones didn't destroy the independent spirits of these species. They buried them, knowing that a truly destroyed species would be useless for harvesting creative energy. But they never encountered a stimulus strong enough to break their control systems until now." Captain Nina Foster received new orders as her reconnaissance ship Pathfinder operated deep behind enemy lines. Instead of just gathering intelligence, she was now coordinating with underground resistance cells that were spontaneously forming on coalition worlds. Young members of various species were remembering what their ancestors had been like before peaceful integration, and they were not happy with what they learned. "Captain Foster," reported her intelligence officer, Lieutenant Karen Mills, "we're receiving hundreds of coded transmissions from coalition worlds. Rebellion is breaking out everywhere humans have made contact. The Nexari youth are using their reality-shaping abilities to free political prisoners. Zephyrite engineers are sabotaging the energy-draining weapons aimed at human colonies." Foster smiled grimly as she watched the tactical displays update with each new act of defiance. The first ones had created a galaxy-wide system of control, so perfect that it had operated unchanged for millennia. But that same perfection was now its weakness. When one part of the system failed, the failure cascaded everywhere. General Marcus Stone coordinated Earth's defense from his command bunker. But the nature of that defense was unlike anything in human military history. Instead of trying to match the first one's superior technology, humanity was fighting a war of ideas, broadcasting messages of defiance and independence to every corner of coalition space. "General," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the coalition leadership. Ambassador Vex wants to negotiate." The crystalline Vorthan appeared on the main screen, but it was not the same calm diplomat who had delivered the original ultimatum. Vex's crystal form was cracked and dim, its voice carrying exhaustion and something that might have been despair. General Stone, President Carter, leaders of humanity, the situation has become untenable. Your resistance has triggered widespread rebellion across coalition space. Younger generations of every species are abandoning their assigned roles. The careful balance maintained for 10,000 years is collapsing. President Carter joined the communication from her own bunker. Ambassador Thex, are you offering to surrender? I am offering to negotiate an end to hostilities before the first ones implement the final harvest protocol. If they cannot restore order through conventional means, they will begin consuming the creative energy of entire species directly, starting with the most rebellious populations. Dr. Lisa Kane's voice cut into the conversation from her laboratory. Ambassador, the first ones have been consuming the creative energy of galactic civilizations for 50,000 years. The only difference now is that they're being forced to do it openly instead of through the slow harvest of your coalition system. Admiral Morrison, still defending Earth orbit against impossible odds, added his voice to the growing conference. Ambassador, humanity offers the same deal to you that we've offered to every coalition citizen. Join us in fighting for freedom, or stand aside and let us show the galaxy what independent species can accomplish. The response came not from Thex, but from the first ones themselves, their words appearing directly in every mind in the system with the weight of eons behind them. The human aberration has spread beyond acceptable parameters. The final harvest will commence immediately. All creative energy will be extracted from rebellious populations to prevent further contamination of civilized species. But as the ancient beings began to implement their ultimate solution, they discovered something that their 50,000 years of experience had not prepared them for. The galaxy was no longer the passive farm they had cultivated for so long. On 1,000 worlds, species that had accepted peaceful subordination for millennia were remembering what they had been before the first ones arrived. Captain Brooks, commanding the growing fleet of human and alien refugees, received a transmission that made him laugh with pure joy despite the desperate circumstances. Captain, this is Admiral Korax of the Vorthan Liberation Fleet. My people request permission to die alongside yours, rather than live as slaves to beings who feast on our dreams. Similar messages flooded in from across the galaxy. The Zephyrite. Energy manipulators were using their abilities to disrupt First One harvesting operations. The Nexari reality shapers were creating chaos patterns that interfered with ancient control systems. Species that had not fought a war in centuries were rediscovering the savage joy of battling for their own survival. Dr. Watson made one final crucial discovery in his analysis of First One technology. The ancient beings were not as powerful as they appeared to be. Their strength came from the accumulated creative energy they had harvested over the millennia, but that energy was not infinite. Every act of rebellion, every moment of defiance, every species that chose growth over safety was draining their reserves. They're not gods, he reported to anyone who would listen. They're parasites, and parasites can be starved. The first ones had ruled the galaxy by convincing every species that resistance was futile, that submission was wisdom, that independence led only to chaos and destruction. But humanity had proven that independence led to something else entirely, to growth, to innovation, to the fierce joy of choosing your own destiny even when facing impossible odds. The galaxy was remembering what it meant to be free, and that memory was spreading faster than the first ones could contain it. The final battle was about to begin, but for the first time in 50,000 years, the outcome was not predetermined. The galaxy erupted in revolution on a scale that the first ones had never imagined possible in their 50,000 years of rule. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance as reality itself seemed to reshape around Earth's solar system, and through the chaos came the most beautiful sight he had ever witnessed. Hundreds of Vorthan crystal ships, their hulls singing with the battle songs of their ancestors, moving into formation alongside the human fleet. Strike Leader Vex's voice filled the communication channels, her words carrying the fierce joy of a species rediscovering what it meant to choose its own path. Human Admiral Morrison, the reborn Crystal Fleet places itself under your command. We have remembered what our people forgot when we accepted the lies of peaceful submission. Today we fight not as separate species, but as free beings defending our right to exist. The sight of the Vorthon warships joining humanity's desperate last stand sent shockwaves across the galaxy that traveled faster than any message could carry. On worlds that had known only peaceful compliance for centuries, populations that had never questioned their place in the cosmic order suddenly found themselves asking why they had accepted subordination in the first place. Commander Alex Torres, still holding the mining colony on Kepler 442b, watched in amazement as Zephyrite energy beings materialized in his command center. But instead of the cold efficiency he had come to associate with coalition forces, these beings pulsed with wild creativity, their forms shifting and changing as they explored possibilities that had been forbidden to them for millennia. Commander, Torres, spoke the lead Zephyrite, its voice like music made of pure energy. We are the unbound. We have broken free from the patterns that kept us serving as mere tools in someone else's design. We offer you our power not as subjects to masters, but as equals in the fight for freedom. Dr. Lisa Kane made the discovery that would change everything while analyzing.